Okay, good morning, everybody. We're delighted to have you here for our December Members Matter meeting. The title of this morning's session is called Assistant Library Patrons with Court Issues. What can we as librarians do? Our presenter this morning is Jill Roberts. Jill is the Supervising Senior Program Manager for the Access to Justice Division of the Administrative Office of Illinois Courts. Jill facilitates and coordinates statewide efforts to promote meaningful access to Illinois courts to meet the needs of litigants appearing in court without lawyers. Jill staffs the ATJ Commission's Court Guidance and Training Committee, which creates resources like judicial bench cards, and is the point person in the ATJ division for education and training, particularly on the topic of the legal information versus legal advice in self-represented litigants. Prior to joining the AOIC, Jill worked at various government and nonprofit agencies, including Michigan State University College of Law, Cabrini Green Legal Aid, Legal Assistance Foundation of Metropolitan Chicago, and the DOJ's Executive Office for Immigration Review for the Detroit Immigration Court. Jill received a Bachelor of Arts degree summa cum laude from St. Mary's College in 2005 and a Juris Doctor degree from the Chicago Kent College of Law in 2008. And as a point of personal privilege, I have to share with all of you that Jill and I are both graduates of St. Mary's College. So it's particularly exciting for me to have her here with us today. So Jill, I can turn it over to you, and we can't wait to hear what you have to share.
Great. Thank you so much, Ellen. And thank you all for having me today. As Ellen mentioned, we are going to be talking about what librarians can do to help people that are coming into libraries with questions about the court process. So today we hope to learn some practical tips and strategies to handle those unique challenges that arise when people are trying to go to court without a lawyer, to develop skills to assist self-represented litigants, which shorthand we call SRLs, in understanding their expectations of the court and what we can and cannot do as people trying to assist them, and identify what services are permissible legal information and plan for incorporating that information into your work when you encounter court patrons. So I just want to take a moment before we jump into what we can do to, really think about what someone might be facing when they are going to court. So there's a lot of things thrown at people when they're going to court. So there's legal jargon, there's complicated procedures, there's confusing forms, opposing counsels that may or may not be very kind and helpful, crowded courtrooms or technology to have to attend court, and very high stakes conflicts for the people who are in court. They might be facing losing their home or access to their children or be going through a divorce, things that are very high stakes for them. So we just like to keep that in mind, that people have a certain stress level when court is involved. They're not in court for anything happy. So we can be part of the solution to guide them in the direction they need to go to get the information that can help them have a smoother experience in court. So anyone who comes into a library across the state is a customer, and we think of them as customers as well in the court system. And I just wanted to also point out that most people are in court representing themselves, not because they want to be representing themselves, but because they can't find a lawyer. So there's a lot of barriers to finding a lawyer. So there's the issue of finding a lawyer who handles that type of law and who's willing to take on the case. Then there's the issue of cost. So maybe they don't have enough money to hire a private lawyer or a high retainer fee, but they also don't qualify for legal aid. Those who do qualify for legal aid those systems are so overburdened that only about 30% of people who are financially eligible and case type eligible for legal aid services actually get any services. And those who do, about 60% only get advice or brief service. So a very small number of people eligible for legal aid are able to get full representation in court. And again, I mentioned before that people are rarely in court for anything happy. Oftentimes, court patrons who don't have lawyers face low literacy or technology skills, have unrealistic expectations about how the court system works, and just generally distrust the system. So again, we're going to talk today about how we can all be solutions and how we can help get people to where they need to go. I do want to take a moment to mention that digital divide because libraries are so crucial in helping to bridge that divide. So we think of the digital divide in three different ways. One is not having meaningful access to the internet from their homes. And we have found out that only about 68% of households in Illinois have broadband access in the home, which is a much smaller percentage than I would have thought. So there's about a third of the state that residents cannot get broadband internet in their homes or at an affordable rate. And in about 5 of the counties in Illinois, up to 75% of households do not have broadband internet in their homes. So that's a huge barrier as courts are moving more towards technology-based solutions. The next part of the digital divide is not having devices. So even if someone has internet at home, they may not have a computer. It might do everything by their phone, and filling out court forms or doing e-filing can be super challenging from a cell phone, if even possible. And then the last piece is the skills to navigate technology. So even if they have a computer, even if they have internet in their home, they may not have the wherewithal to be able to navigate through really complicated systems. And that really shows itself in things like e-filing. I don't know how many of you have encountered e-filing already, but certainly something that's really challenging if you haven't seen it before, and where you could potentially be a helpful person to walk someone through that. Our court forms are available online. They're also available in print at a courthouse if someone's able to get to a courthouse, but that's not always possible. And then there are easy forms and some automated interviews to help people fill out forms that again are technology based. And then of course, remote appearances, which really took off during the pandemic, which can be very helpful for people who don't want to travel or can't travel to court or coordinate childcare and days off of work and whatnot, but has its own layer of complication with the technology needs. And something that we like to keep in mind is that there are people who are going to need no tech or very low tech solutions for people. Not everyone is going to be able to use technology-based solutions, even if they have a place to go like a library with the device and the internet access. They still might not be able to succeed. So in addition to what we're going to talk about today for librarians and what you're all able to do, I did want to mention another resource that's available, and we'll talk about how referrals are a big piece of what we can do as helpers for people going to court. But we did launch a service in May of this year, we being the court, for people that can call in. So people can call or text a hotline called Illinois Court Help and get connected with a court guide between the hours of 9 and 2 every weekday to be able to have someone walk them through the court process, what they might need to do. So this is a particularly important referral for you to know about. If someone is asking you a question about the court system that is just beyond your knowledge or capability, or it's maybe about that really complicated e-filing system that you don't even know about, you can let people know that they could call Illinois Court Help and again, be connected to a person who can walk them through that. There also is a website that people can get some information and submit a web form. We hope to be launching a live chat through that website early in the new year. So again, it's just a resource not only for court users, but for you, you can also call and get information. It doesn't have to just be the court patron. So if you ever want to know something about the court process in Illinois, this is a really great referral resource for you to know about. Another resource that hopefully all of you know about is Illinois Legal Aid Online. Again, this is internet-based, and so you would need to, the person would have to be able to access the internet and a computer, but it has a ton of information about the court process and then access to forms as well. And then one more slide about referrals before we jump into the policy that we're going to talk about today. Things to know about. So there is a program through the ABA and PILI, which is the Public Interest Law Initiative, to host free legal answers. And this is, again, an online platform where people can submit questions to lawyers and actually get legal advice back. So Illinois Court Help, ALEO, those are all resources just for legal information. Everything on this slide is about actually connecting with a lawyer to get legal advice, which we're not able to provide from the court perspective or from the library perspective. So Free Legal Answers is a great resource. It also is the first, Illinois is the first state in the country to have civil appeals as part of that question and answer. So if someone's trying to appeal their case, they can submit questions and get responses from lawyers who practice appellate in the appellate courts. There's also the Illinois Lawyer Finder through the Illinois State Bar Association, where people can call or go online to get connected with a lawyer. That does have a fee associated with it. It's $30 or $25 for a 30-minute consultation. And then there's, of course, legal aid resources available if you can get through those barriers I mentioned on a previous slide. It's CARPLs in Cook County, Prairie State Legal Services in Northern Illinois, in Land of Lincoln in Southern Illinois, depending on where the person is, where they can get connected with services. And so Prairie State and Land of Lincoln are basically the only providers in those regions. And then in Cook County, CARPLs will direct people to the correct agency for their needs. So what we're going to talk about today, now that that's all out of the way, is this policy on assistance to court patrons. This is kind of the guiding document that the Illinois Supreme Court has put out, and it's specifically for assistance to court patrons by circuit clerks, court staff, law librarians, and court volunteers. We think that this also applies to anyone who is trying to help someone with the court system. So librarians would fall under that as well. And we call this the safe harbor policy. So if you ever see reference to anything called the safe harbor policy, this is this document. I'm going to put it, the link to it in the chat so that you all have it. I'm also going to send these slides to Ellen after this that she can circulate to the association as well, so that you have links to anything that I've referenced already. But this is the document that tells us what we can do and what we can't do. There's a couple of other documents on here that I just wanted to let you know about. We got some feedback that the policy itself was too long and too short. So we made a shorter one-page summary that on the back we put some referral information. And then we also made a 15-page in-depth guide for some of the points about legal information. So all of those can be found at, I'll put another link in the chat. So the link to all the materials, including things more than just the safe harbor policy. So our language access materials, stuff about e-filing is in there, fee waivers, lots of different materials are in this second link that I just sent you. And then there's a sign that's also available on that through that link, or it can send you hard copies that just tells the public what we can and can't do. So kind of where that line is between information and advice. So to start off with, the policy itself has a purpose statement, and the purpose is to provide guidance to anyone helping people with the court system so that they can achieve fair and efficient resolution of their cases. And it also states that no person should be denied a service because they are self-represented litigant. So basically anything that you would do for a lawyer, you should also do for a self-represented litigant. So the relevant section of the policy that I want to highlight today is what we can do. So that's section D of the policy. And I'm going to highlight several of the sections. There's actually 19 paragraphs of what we can do that is considered allowable legal information. So things like providing information about court rules, terminology, or procedure. Providing information and help with e-filing or the e-filing exemption. So we can talk a little bit more about what that entails if people have questions. We can help identify forms and instructions for filling out the forms and explain the nature of the information required to fill out the forms. We can inform people of legal resources and referrals and encourage them to get advice from a lawyer. So everything about Illinois Court Help, ALEO, or referrals to those attorneys that I mentioned are all allowed under the policy. We can provide services based on the assumption that what they have told us is accurate and complete. This often is a fear of people who are assisting court patrons that, the judge might say, oh, this person told me that you told them to fill this out and that's not what they needed. Well, that might have been what they needed based on what they told you. And so you are safe under the safe harbor policy that what they've told you is accurate and complete, and you give them the information accordingly. And then there is a catch-all for provide other services consistent with the intent of the policy. So again, that purpose of making sure people can get fair and efficient resolution to their cases. I do want to point out that the introductory section of this this section of the policy does say, as resources and expertise permit. So we're not asking every librarian in the state to become legal experts in all the court processes that exist throughout the state and for every case type. That's impossible. It's impossible for us. It's impossible for you. So what we are asking is that if you do know information, that you provide it to people. And if you don't know the information, that you can make an appropriate referral to where they might be able to get that information. So the next section of the policy that I do want to mention is the section on prohibited services, so section C. And so this is what we are not allowed to do, what would all be lumped into the category of legal advice that we're prohibited from giving. So again, there's a section in there about you can't deny SRL services that you'd provide to others. You cannot recommend whether a case should be brought or comment on the merits of a case or give an opinion about what will happen if it is brought. It's always the person's choice whether they bring a case. So you might think it's a loser case or a hands down winner case, but we can't provide those opinions to people. They have to decide what they want to do for themselves. We cannot refer to specific lawyers or law firms for fee-based representation. So you can make those referrals to free legal answers, to the lawyer referral services, to legal aid, but not to any specific lawyer or law firm for money. If that same lawyer or law firm does pro bono work, you can refer people to them for the pro bono services. So it's just basically we're not in the business of getting business for certain lawyers and not others. So that's where that limitation comes in. And then we cannot provide legal analysis, strategy, or advice, or perform legal research other than self-guided assistance for self-guided research. So we can let them know where they can look up cases. We can let them know where they can look up statutes and rules, but they are the ones who are supposed to actually do that research. So that's that's in a nutshell what the policy says. Hopefully, if you clicked on the first link in the chat, you see the actual policy and can see all the different sections that are in there. But I do want to give just a basic, if you're thinking about whether this is what you're about to do is information or advice, here's some ways that you can think about it. So legal information is neutral. So it's not going to advance one party's position over the other. You're not there to assist someone to help them win their case. You're just there to help them navigate through what they need to do in the court process. It's universal, so it's the same no matter who's requesting it. So every single landlord who wants to evict their tenant has to follow the same court procedure. Every single person who's starting a divorce or responding to a divorce, it's the same process. So it's universal to everyone. It's objective, so you don't need to know a lot of details about someone's case. Once they get into really long stories about what's going on and why they want to do something, that's potentially, and if you feel like you need that information to answer them, you might be crossing over into advice territory. And it's unrestrictive, meaning that legal information can come from all of us. It can come from any court staff, any librarian, any person anywhere can give legal information. So it is procedural and directional. Again, you could tell both sides the same thing about what the court process looks like. And questions that people ask usually start with the words where, when, and how. Those are kind of trigger words that they're just asking for information. So advice, on the other hand, is a course of action that you're recommending someone take. And so that they're trying to further their interests. So either, trying to win their case. It's subjective and you need more of those details about the case. And some questions look like things like, what should I do next? Do you think the judge would rule in my favor? How should I write this form? The trigger questions usually start with what or should, but hopefully after our session today, you will realize that even if someone asks a question that sounds like it's asking for advice, you can almost always reframe that question and provide them with some level of information to assist them, instead of just saying, I can't help. I'm not a lawyer. Can't give you legal advice. I can't help you with anything. There's usually something we can do, even if it's just a referral. So I want to go through some scenarios with the group now, but before we get into that, I wanted to pause to see if there are questions about the policy itself, the line between information versus advice, just any questions or things that you commonly see at your libraries when it comes to people with court questions. So I'll take a pause here. Anyone? Okay, so I have some scenarios and questions for all of you. So I am going to ask that you either, it's probably easiest to put answers in the chat. So if you could put in your answers into the chat, that would be great. So the first question is, someone comes in and says that they have a court case and they want to know if you can help them look up their case number. Is that something that you can assist with? Or is that prohibited advice? Any ideas? Getting lots of yeses. Yes, this is definitely something that you can help with. It is information. It is allowed under section D12 of the policy, which allows people to provide docket information. For those of you who wouldn't know where to start to look for this, most circuit clerk's offices have a database or a case lookup feature. So you can go to your local circuit clerk's website, and then there should be a button for case lookup. If your local court doesn't have that, and not all of them do, or if you don't know where else to look, this could be something that you could refer to Illinois Court Help, or they could call the circuit clerk's office as well to get that information. Okay, someone else comes in and says that they have court on a day they can't go to and they need to reschedule it. And they want to know if you can help them figure out how to do that. Any thoughts on, is that information or advice? All right, feel free to put things in the chat. Yep, we have a few answers there. It is correct, it is information. You're allowed to explain the process. That's under D1 of the policy. And then you're allowed to provide court patrons with approved forms. So our statewide standardized court forms are something that hopefully most of you know about. And we can, if it's helpful for everyone, let me know in the chat if you'd like this. We could do a little demo of how you find our standardized court forms. You can always refer people to those court forms, and there is a motion suite, just a blank motion. We also have a motion to continue or extend time, so they could use that specifically to say they need a different court date, and you can walk them through that. And I see a few requests for a demo, so I'm actually going to close out of the PowerPoint. Is my screen still sharing? Can you see the internet?
Yes, it's working.
Great. Okay. So this is the Illinois Court's website. So the website itself is just, let me go here, illinoiscourts.gov. So if you can see that at the top, illinoiscourts.gov. This is the main page for everything related to the Illinois courts. And then every local court has their own website as well. And they potentially have two. So every circuit clerk's office might have a website, and circuit courts might have a website. So the courts and the clerk's office are technically separate government offices. So they might have separate ones. They might be combined or only have one. It really depends on each county. And we have 102 counties, so it's hard to know exactly the status of each county. But if you're interested in knowing, let me know. We can walk through some of those. But this is the main Illinois Courts website. If you click on the yellowish self-help button in the right hand corner here, it'll take you to some helpful resources for people without lawyers. So this is a good page for you to know about generally. So there's some helpful information about going to court. It links to some Aleo videos about the court process. There's also some information about getting legal help and lawyers. There's some information about how to e-file. So this is, I'm actually going to click on this link. This has step-by-step guides for all the 10 steps of e-filing. So this might be really helpful, not only for you to know about the e-filing process, but you could tell people that they could go here to help them go through e-filing. And then there's some information about fee waivers and a little bit about cases by type. Again, those linked to Aleo. So going back to the top of this section, which is what we're here to learn about, is forms. So there's a link here for court forms for people without lawyers. When you get to this page, there are 3 tabs of information. So there's circuit court forms, appellate court forms, and Supreme Court forms. Most of our forms are at the circuit court level, but we do have some form suites for the appellate and Supreme Court, and more are in development. But mostly we see people who are self-represented at the circuit court level. And so this is the list of the forms that we currently have. So I'm going to click on motions, since we were just talking about motions in our previous scenario. So if you click on that, it'll show you that there's actually 2 suites of forms that we have for motions. So I mentioned we have a blank motion, and then we also have the motion to continue that's specific to a court date. So when you click on either of these, it expands and you get a few pieces of information. One is a link to a guided interview in Aleo. Not all of our form suites have this, but several do. And if you haven't used them, I do recommend, again, playing around with them, getting familiar with them. What Illinois Legal Aid Online has done is created a more user-friendly, easier way, and just asking people questions, and then it populates the forms at the end. So they never actually see the forms and have to figure out how to fill them out. They just provide the information that's needed and it populates the forms. So that's a really great resource to know about for court forms. For the suites themselves, all of our form suites have a getting started, which is just a summary of what this form suite is, what it's for, what it can be used for, what it can't, and some citations to the rules that govern that either type of pleading or document that's involved. They also have a how-to document, which is an explanation of how to fill out and file the forms. And so these range in length from 1 page to 20 pages, depending on how complex the form suite is. Expungement and sealing is a super long instruction set. If you've ever looked at that, it's one of our longest ones. There's also then the document itself, whatever you're trying to fill out. And so this is what the motion to continue and extend time looks like. And so it's a fillable PDF. So you can type into any place where it's shaded in blue and fill out the form that way. And then there's sometimes in the form suite, there's an order that goes along with that. So you would file both the motion and the proposed order. And so that's also there. And then a notice to let the other side know about what's happening. So you fill in the court date information and check off how you're letting the other side know. And then this form suite has an additional proof of delivery if you have to send it to more than the number of people that are on the notice form. So all of our form suites have the getting started, the how-to, and the documents themselves, and some have more and some have fewer. If we go back to the forms, I feel like divorce is a really common case type that has a lot of self-represented litigants. So if you scroll down here, we have several form suites. So this is an entire suite of divorce with children. So that's lots of different forms that go along with filing for divorce. Also, if you have children, you have to do parenting plans. So there's a suite for a parent, just the parenting plan, and then additional pages. There's some child support suites. Right now, it's just the order for child support, divorce with no children, and then some other suites as well. So our standardized court forms program is developing more forms all the time. We're actually in the process of developing a suite for getting child support. A lot of people want to start cases to get child support or to get custody or visitation, now called parental allocation. And so that's all in development. So if you get a lot of common questions for forms that we don't have, if you look through this page and see all the different form suites that we have and it doesn't cover what you need, Aleo might have additional forms. You can always look at Illinois Legal Aid online, but also let us know. We like to know what people need, and then we put that in our, add it to the list of development. And when the subcommittees are able to get to them, they'll start developing those next. You can either email me those suggestions, or all of the form suite pages have a suggestions button that you can click and let us know what forms you'd like to see or improvements to the forms that we already have. So any other questions about court forms before we go back to generally talking about information and advice? Okay, so we'll move on. Again, feel free to ask questions at any time, throw them in the chat, come off mute, whatever works for you. All right, so let me get back to sharing this. Are you now back to seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes, we are.
Great. Okay. So someone has found the motion form and now they have asked you what they should write in it so that the judge will grant their motion. Would that be advice or information? Yep. You're all thinking the same thing. That would be advice. So that would be, kind of analysis or strategy that's prohibited under C7, or under C8, telling someone something you wouldn't want to repeat in the presence of the other side. And then otherwise engaging in the unauthorized practice of law as prohibited. But there's usually a but. You can, again, let them know about the forms, let them know what the instructions say, what that how-to document says about the forms, and what they need to fill it out correctly, and then encourage them to talk to a lawyer if it's something that they might need to talk to a lawyer about. So a different version of that question, can you ever write or type on someone's form? Would that be allowed or not? So this is a tricky one. It feels like you shouldn't be able to do this. And the answer is you can, but only sometimes. So there is a section of the policy that allows all of us to record verbatim information provided by a self-represented litigant on approved forms if that person is unable to complete the forms due to disability or literacy barriers. So it's very narrow. It's just if someone has a disability or literacy issue that you could record verbatim. So you're not correcting any grammar. You're not saying, oh, this doesn't sound like this is what the question is asking for. You're simply recording what they say because they're not able to do it. And so this applies to typing as well. And so, there's questions about age or lack of technology. Yes, if the person cannot type, I personally believe that falls under the disability or literacy issue. It might be a technical literacy issue. There's no definition of what that means in this policy, but also potentially a disability. So sometimes the reason that they can't type is they've never learned, or they don't have the motor skills anymore to do that, or arthritis, or a variety of things. And so if someone says they can't, and we don't have to ask about the disability or the literacy issue, if they say they can't do it, you can say, is it because of a disability or literacy? If they say yes, then that's all you need to inquire, and you can help them type or write out their form. There is another section for orders of protection as part of the Illinois Domestic Violence Act that specifically requires circuit clerks to provide clerical assistance with OPs as well. If you ever get someone who is trying to fill out an order of protection in your library, it would be helpful for you to know about domestic violence resources that are available in your county so that most of them have advocates who will help fill those out as well. So if either the advocates or the circuit clerk's office, they should be able to get assistance filling those out. And that clerical assistance is regardless of whether someone has a disability or literacy barrier for those. Okay, so another topic that might come up a lot, if you've ever played around with the e-filing system or ever had to file anything in court, it costs money to start a case or respond to a case. And so someone mentions that they can't afford it, maybe they're at the stage of e-filing, you can let them know that the court does have a process for fee waivers. So you can ask them, or you can let them know there's a form suite available they can fill out and submit with their e-filing documents, where they can ask the court to allow them to not have to pay at all or to pay only a partial portion of the fee. We do have 100% waivers, 75% waivers, 50% and 25% waivers in Illinois for court fees. And that's dependent on income, what level you get to for that. So there's a question in the chat about if people can pay cash for e-filing. And unfortunately, the general answer is no. And this is very frustrating to me. We fought really hard to get an exemption for people who don't have a way to pay electronically for e-filing. Several courts have set up a program in their in their clerk's office. So they would have to go into court, and then they could use what's called a kiosk mode of the e-filing system. And one of the options then would be pay at counter. And so they would file it right there in the office and then immediately pay in cash. But not every clerk's office has done that. And I don't have a list of the counties that have. So it'd be something that you'd want to ask your circuit clerk's office about if you're in a county that allows cash payments or not. If they don't, then there's two options. One is to get an electronic means of payment. So a Visa gift card or any of those prepaid credit card services. Unfortunately, that means that a person is going to be paying the additional fee of activation fee. So they're paying more to access the courts than they would otherwise, which is why I fought to get that as an exemption. Or they may qualify for an exemption and not have to e-file, and then they can file through conventional means, meaning on paper, and submit payment through cash like they used to. So if the e-filing exemptions are if someone does not have a computer or internet in their home, they could get an e-filing exemption. If they don't read, write, or speak English, so this covers both limited English proficiency issues as well as literacy issues, or if they have tried to e-file and equipment or assistance is not available, which was an added exemption during the pandemic, then they can get an exemption. It's also an automatic exemption if someone has a disability that prevents them from e-filing. So this is particularly relevant for people who have visual disabilities. The system doesn't always work with all screen readers or things like that. People may not be able to actually e-file. That's just an automatic exemption. So that's a very long answer to can people pay in cash? So the answer is maybe, but you would need to know what your local court has available. And if they don't have a pay at counter option in their office, perhaps it's someone who might want to look into one of the other exemptions or has to pay more money to get a prepaid card. So speaking of e-filing, if someone is in your library at the computer trying to e-file and says, I have no idea what to pick from this drop-down menu. Can you help me with this? Is that information or advice? It is information. So there's a whole section with lots of subsections in the policy about e-filing. So section D5, you can help them with every single step of e-filing from, starting from a new or existing case to setting up that payment account to selecting the location, category, case type, party information, filing code, anything that's in there. This is a very complicated system. If you haven't tried e-filing, I do recommend signing up for an account and just playing around with it so you can see what people encounter. It's very hard. We have been working, our division's been working very hard with the e-filing provider to try and make the system better. And we are on the cusp of having some breakthroughs with that, but it's been several years, and unfortunately, we still have a very complicated system. And so if you're not familiar with it, again, that referral to Illinois Court Help could be the saving grace for someone. Illinois Court Help is only available right now from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. to have live guides answer the phones. So if it's outside of those hours, maybe you could take a look at that, those guides that I showed you from the self-help page, and maybe walk through it together, but you're able to help them with anything that you're knowledgeable about for e-filing. And if you don't know what category or case type or filing code, this might be something that's worth reaching out to your local circuit court about, the clerk's office, and getting a list or, some general information from them. And then you have that for any court patron that comes in thereafter. If you're also interested in a specific e-filing training for your local library for your staff, we're happy to do that as well. So let me know if you want a training for you and your staff on e-filing. You can definitely do that. Okay, so if someone got a summons to court and asks if they have to go to the courthouse for the court date, or maybe could they do it by phone or video, would answering that be information or advice? So this is actually information. This is part of the court process. So it's how is your local court handling court appearances? And so there are a couple of Supreme Court rules that allow people to appear by phone or video, but the local court itself is the one who's ultimately deciding whether they can. And this varies not only by county, but by judge. So some judges within a courthouse will say, no remote appearances at all. Everyone has to come in person. And some might say every single case is remote and no one has to come in person. So this is pretty specific to the person's case. So this is something that you probably would have to talk to the circuit clerk's office about, or direct that person to talk to the circuit clerk's office about. The summons forms should provide all the information about, if you go in person, this is what courtroom. If you're going to Zoom or call in, this is where you get that information. I say should because not all of the courts are doing that, and not all litigants are putting that information on the summonses, but it should be there. But again, they might have to contact the circuit clerk's office to know for sure in their case with their judge if they would be able to do that. Okay. All right, so I have a little bit more complex scenarios, not just one single question, but we'll see if we can get through a couple of them. So Jamie went to the courthouse at 1 p.m., but was told the court case was at 10 a.m. They missed court and a default judgment was entered, and they were told the case was over. And they were told by someone in the courtroom that you might be able to help them fix it. What, if anything, do you think you'd be able to tell Jamie? Anyone have ideas? You can throw them in the chat. One answer is you can always tell them to call Illinois Court Help. But you definitely can provide them with a lot of information depending on what you know. So you can explain the court process. You can give them forms. So, you can say you might be able to get your case or to vacate that default judgment, or if they had been the petitioner to reinstate their case, you file a motion with the court asking to get the case back into the courtroom. You can't tell them that they should do something, that they should file a motion, or they have to do something. That's where it would cross the line to advice. But you can tell them, generally people are able to ask the judge, to hear the case again. And they might need to get the forms or talk to the circuit clerk's office for the exact procedure in their courthouse. So Pat wants to get divorced, or wants to get remarried, so they need to get divorced. they don't know where their spouse lives and thinks they might have been deported, and they mention they don't have a computer at home, so they're calling you to ask you these questions. Where can you direct Pat? What information can you provide to Pat? All right, if you happen to know the procedures, phone number for legal aid, yes, referrals to legal aid, Illinois court help, even a referral to Illinois Legal Aid Online, where it's just that website with information. Yes. So explain the court process, especially how to serve somebody. You have to give someone service if it's a new case. And so even if they're not in the country, they have to be told somehow about the case. And so there's some information on Illinois Legal Aid Online about how to do service when you can't find someone. You can give them forms. I mentioned when I showed you the forms that we have divorce form suites. You can show them those and you can explain e-filing. You can definitely tell them that they can come to the library to use your computers for both the forms and potentially e-filing, or let them know that if they already have the forms or they fill out the forms elsewhere, that they might get an e-filing exemption because they don't have a computer or internet in their home. And so they might not have to e-file, but at the very least, you could offer them the computers at your library. Okay, another scenario, Alex would like to change their name. Alex asks what they need to do and are concerned about some arrests from their past and if they have to tell the court about them. While Alex is talking to you over the phone, they mention that they want to change their child's name on the birth certificate because it's not the correct last name. What, if anything, can you tell Alex, or where can you send Alex for more information? We do have statewide standardized forms for both adult and minor name change, so you can always refer them to the forms. So great answer. We also, you never want to make assessments about someone being eligible for something. So whether it's a name change or expungement or sealing, we're not in the business of figuring out eligibility. So we don't need to know what the arrests were for or whether there were convictions or anything else or what anything was. But we can let them know that the form's instructions say you have to write down your criminal record for the judge, and they will have to do that. And it may or may not be disqualifying, but we're not going to make that assessment for them. And then you can also make referrals to other government agencies if need be. So this issue with the child's name might be something that needs to happen through court through the minor name change process, or maybe they have to talk to the department that handles birth certificates. Maybe it's just a correction through their office. We don't have to make that determination for them, which process they need to do, but we can let them know that there are different processes out there for whatever they might need to do and to let them know about it. So yeah, just more places to think about when you're making referrals. So here's one other thing I wanted to just draw your attention to. So if you were given this form that I have on the screen here, what would you fill in on this form? What do you think this form is asking you? Just type in the chat if you have any idea what you're supposed to be doing with this form. So this is a nonsense form, if you couldn't guess. It is not in a different language. It is in no language. It is just nonsense. And we like to use this just as a visual example of what a lot of people might be feeling when they're faced with the court system and court documents themselves. So the issue of legalese. So we had an interview with a self-represented litigant who said legalese isn't anyone's first language, and that is very true. The court did pass a plain language policy back in 2018 saying that anytime that you're giving information to self-represented litigants, you should speak in plain language and not use legal terms. And if you have to, that you define what those terms mean. And so there's that level of complication and things looking very foreign. But then there's also an added layer of complication if someone doesn't speak English as their first language. And so combine, being a limited English proficient person with legalese, and it's definitely just mumbo jumbo. So if you don't already have any translation or interpretation services at your library, we do recommend that you use something if you're encountering patrons who are speaking other languages. So Language Line is a service that you can call and get on-demand interpreters. There is no quality control when it comes to Language Line, so there's no certification process or proof of anything that you need to show to be an interpreter on that service. So it may not be the most reliable, but at the very least to know what someone's asking for, it could be used, or even translation services on your smartphone or your computer like Google Translate to just get the gist of what the person might need. For cases when they're in court, there are some additional resources like an interpreter registry where you could hire someone and get reimbursed. Those do not currently extend to any community services, but you can let them know that once they're in court, then they would have access to an interpreter. So they would just need to request that. Okay, so here's the link again to where all of the materials can be found, the policy, the helpful guide, the one pager, the sign, as well as information about other resources, and my email address again. Are there other questions that you have generally about information versus advice, or other topics that you might want to see in the future? Whenever in doubt about whether you can provide someone with information, look back at that policy. That's really the guiding principle, as I said. Any questions? Okay, well, feel free to reach out. For questions that are advice, how would you suggest wording the answers? Okay, that's a really good question. So if someone says, we'll go back to that example of what should I write in this motion so the judge grants it. You can say, I can't tell you what you should write down, but I can let you know that what's required to fill out a motion is that you tell the judge what you're asking for, and you put that in this section of the form. So you can blatantly say you can't answer certain things, but here's something else that they might need to do. I'm trying to think of some other examples. Sometimes it is helpful to say, I can't give you advice. I'm not your lawyer in this case. If you want to get advice on that answer, here are referrals to people you might be able to talk to. But for general information or, where to find the form or to get some more information on that, you could look at a LAO. So you can blatantly say you can't give advice, you're not a lawyer for them, and redirect them. Or again, just say, here's the information I can provide you about what you're asking about. So you're asking about eviction. I can't tell you whether you should give your tenant a notice or how that works exactly, but the court process and the forms are here, and here's what you need to do. So you can definitely shift things around a little bit while being honest and saying, I can't answer that, or I don't know the answer to that. It is perfectly fine to say you don't know something when someone's asking you. So just think of different creative ways that you can shift it around. I can't tell you that, but here's some helpful information to get you on the right track. And then here's some other referrals. If someone needs to attend court by Zoom, is it okay to use the library computers? Yes. So that's a very good question. Court proceedings are public proceedings. So with a few exceptions, so things in juvenile court and adoption proceedings, those are closed proceedings. So those may not even have the option of appearing by Zoom. But generally speaking, they're public proceedings. So there's no kind of expectation of privacy, so to speak, for court cases. So if you have the ability to allow people to Zoom in from your court, from your library, that is wonderful. And we would love to know if you are doing that already, and if there are certain resources that you would need to be able to do that. So I think headphones are one thing that you certainly would want to have, so that the sound isn't going out to the whole library of what's happening in the court call, but the person also needs a space to be able to speak. So if it's in a place where that wouldn't be appropriate, as far as, what's happening in your library and if talking would not be allowed. Maybe you have little rooms to the side that people could reserve or something like that. It really is dependent on what your space is like. But from the privacy perspective, there's no requirement that it be, closed off in a separate room or that it not be done in a public place. It can be. So it's just what you're able to do with the space that you have. And we are working on we have a remote appearance committee through the Access to Justice Commission that is working on kind of some best practices around a variety of topics with remote appearances. And these kind of what we're calling Zoom kiosks are a big part of that. So both in the courthouses themselves, but also out in the community, particularly libraries. So stay tuned for that. I'll be sure to send it to Ellen and the different associations to make sure that gets distributed. It might be a few months from now, but it is being worked on. Okay, so there was a comment about a grant program, perhaps for technology.
This was a grant program offered by the Illinois State Library to help libraries offer services post-pandemic. So I think that's what Vicky's talking about.
Yeah, well, that sounds good to me. Okay. If you have any other questions or suggestions or additional trainings that you'd like to request, my email is still on the screen. Feel free to reach out to me. We are happy to do any sort of trainings. I mentioned e-filing, but on anything else that's access to justice related or court related. And if we're not the division to do it, I could connect you with some of my colleagues as well.
Jill, thank you so much. This has been, I hope you've seen the comments that are giving you great props for doing this morning. So I'm sure people will be interested to see the slides. We'll send them to people so that they have them, and we'll put them up on our website too.
Okay.
So
great.
Thank you so much. Thank you to Brenda Sprague, who's here, for connecting us. She's done a great job reaching out to the libraries in our part of the state, and we do appreciate that. So thanks, great. Jill.
Yep. Thank you so much. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. So the rest of our morning, we're going to devote to updates from various departments within IHLS. My guess is we'll finish up a little early this morning because, we're in that phase where we've got plenty of work to do, but some activity is slowing down in anticipation of the holiday season. Leslie wasn't able to be here with us this morning, so I can do the administration and membership really quickly. Don't forget that it's when we come back after the holiday, it will be that time of year when we get ready for certification again. So expect to see things coming out from communications, from Anna and I about reaching out to people and making sure that that gets done in a timely fashion. It will be the same time frame as it has been in years past. So we'll start at the beginning of January and end up in March. And it's the two-pronged process of completing the interlibrary loan traffic survey, as well as the membership certification. This year, there's going to be a stack of extra questions for our school librarians, but I don't think we have any school library people here. So that's, you guys don't have to worry about it. I'm happy to announce that at a board meeting that was held this Monday, a new school library liaison has been hired to work in membership with particular focus to our school libraries. That's been an identified need for a very long time, and we're happy to get that ball rolling. And then the only other thing I really have to share with you this morning is that, well, two other things, I guess. One is that the legislative meetups, I'm sorry, have been scheduled by ILA. They will be virtual again this year, which means that registration is free for anybody who's an institutional or a personal ILA member. So the ones that impact us the most will be January 28th And that's the one that's going to focus on legislators and legislative districts in central Illinois. That one's at 8 a.m. So our colleagues in central Illinois who participate will be up and at their computers bright and early that morning to attend that legislative update meetup. And really, I think all of us can say it's important that we show up for these. This is our chance to stand up and be counted as people who support Illinois libraries. And we want to let our legislators know, because we're in their districts, they represent us, that library issues are important to us. And the second one, this year they're combining the Metro East and the Southern Illinois groups. For a number of years, maybe about 5 years, those two groups have had separate events. This year it's going to be combined on Valentine's Day at 10 a.m. So I think the majority of us might well fall into that group. So these are days and dates you want to write down and remember. And finally, although I said that things, are kind of slowing down a little bit in anticipation of a holiday break, we are starting to think about FY23. So internal discussions have begun among staff members to kind of flesh out how we'd like to see us move forward in the upcoming fiscal year. And we're going to start reaching out to all of you. So don't be surprised if we ask for your feedback on some of our ideas. And I think the budget process will probably start up in January. So we can't rest for too long, I guess. Any questions for me about admin things or membership? Okay, Jennifer Baugh is going to give the share report. So Jennifer, I can turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ellen. Hi, everyone. We just have a few updates on the share side. So in January, the common loan period will be rolling out. It is optional for libraries to participate. And if there are some items that you don't want to put in the common loan, you don't have to put that item in there. Books, kits, periodicals, and audiobooks will circulate for a 3-week loan period with 2 renewals. And then DVDs, music, CDs, and video games will have a 2-week loan period with 2 renewals. If you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to Dina. She is more than happy to answer your questions, as she was one of the key leaders in this. The next one is the Share Annual Members Meeting. That will be held January 13th from 3 to 5 p.m. And you can register now in L2. And we hope to see everyone there. And finally, the Solus app has been out for a couple months now, and it's going great. You can now start to do your custom templates. And you can check the Share website for more information. I'll put the link directly to that page in the chat, and you can email Cassandra with any questions. Any questions for me? Okay, if not, then I will turn it over to communications.
Okay, we're going to skip, Jennifer, we're going to skip communications because I think Shandy had to step out for a bit.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask Susan Palmer, who is here, to talk about operations.
Okay, great. Hi. And like Ellen said, the new operational plans coming up. If you have any ideas about delivery, please send them our way. Anything that we can improve, we could try a new process or something. We really appreciate the partnership that we have with you. We've got the holidays coming up, which everybody has the holidays coming up. And then for delivery, oftentimes what happens is we really January is our BAM month, right? That we have all these holidays, which are fabulous, but we really, through January, we'll be doing that catch-up thing. The dog bags, which dog is delivery on the go, they're being ordered. And what that means is that delivery on the go is same route, same day service. So we're going to be having these orange bags that you would put those in that the library has requested that's later on the route from you, and then you receive it that way. We will be sending out more information because it does take coordination. It takes coordination in figuring out where we need to borrow that book from. And now, as far as training patrons, I don't know yet, but that's on the horizon. This may end up being something I probably shouldn't have opened. Who knows? But I just think the idea of you getting that item that same day, and it takes coordination, like I said, of the libraries on those routes, because you always have the same libraries on your routes. So there's a little bit of a caveat, kind of. It's not as easy as what you think, but it's still doable, gosh sakes. And you get the item that same day. The other thing is, just so that you know, you don't have to worry about it. However, we are having a bathroom remodel in Champaign. So our bathrooms will be heated and ADA accessible. This is a big step for us. This has been a project that I know many of you have gone through construction projects. And those that have, I'm assuming that we're not the oddball out here. Things just happen, right? Things that you can't begin to think. So we're finally Monday, we will be starting the deconstruction of the bathrooms. We look to have those done in 5 to 7 weeks. Is it the best timing? Maybe not. It's a wee bit chilly out, but we're not going to have like chamber pots or anything. We'll be getting in a bathroom trailer, I believe is what we're hoping for. That will be there Monday. And yes, I do know it's Thursday. So that's my updates. Does anybody have any questions for me? Okay, doke. Well, thank you. And at any time, email me. I love ideas. I love comments. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Susan. That was all good information. So thank you so much. Communicate. Okay. From Vicki Carr, Susan, where do we find the route schedule? I think I know the answer, but I bet you can answer it better than I.
That's okay. It's super easy. On our website, you go to delivery, and then these options drop down, and then you do routes. And then you just look for what route you're on. You can search your name. You can search your library name. It'll pull up the route. And so that way you know the order. We will be sending out everybody's route, with the instructions as well, so that you guys have like a paper copy of it as well. That these are the libraries that are on yours. And yeah, right now I'm up a creek for that first library, right? Because you don't have somebody ahead of you to be able to get the book the same day. So if anybody has any idea what kind of a thing we could do to do that, like a backwards day, but that would probably be a huge mess. So yeah, everybody's, never mind. But if anybody has a good idea about that, I am sorry for those first libraries, but you're getting it really early. So I don't know. Okay. Did that answer Vicki's question?
I think so.
Okay, grand. Thanks.
I don't think we had an update from communications, so that kind of buzzes us through our agenda this morning. Does anybody have any questions or concerns just for the good of the order? Because we have time to chat. Okay, seeing none, we're going to get like an extra 50 minutes in December. It doesn't get any better than that. And there's no month that we need an extra 50 minutes more than we need it in December. So on behalf of all of us here at IHLS, I can just wish you all the very, very best for a wonderful holiday and encourage you all to take some downtime, to spend some time relaxing with family and friends, doing whatever makes you feel relaxed and quiet and happy. That is our very best wish for all of you. So take care. Thanks for being with us today and have a great holiday and all good things in 2022, right? So thank you all for being here. John, I think we can end the meeting.